So I'm sure you guys may have seen that there is a new game in town called BattleBit Remastered. It's a low poly game that is being actually touted as the Battlefield game that we all wanted, and it's actually gained a lot of hype within the community. So today I wanted to talk about the game. It is actually just in early access as we speak, and I pretty much wanted to go over whether or not I think this game is worth buying, and whether or not it is actually the Battlefield game that we all wanted. If you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications, but with that being said, let's get stuck right into it. So firstly, there are a few things to know before we get into the video. BattleBit Remastered is unfortunately only a PC game, which is actually a real bummer, because I think if this game was available on consoles, it would actually do really well, and would probably play really well on a console or on a controller. So if you are a console player, unfortunately, this is only available on the PC, and it's available for about $23 Australian, or that translates to about $15 US. So it's pretty cheap. It is actually in early access, so it's not the proper launch of the game just yet, and it's been in the works for 7 years. So this has been under development for quite a long time now. As far as I know, it is a very small team that's been working on it. It's almost what you could classify as like fan-made in a way, or at least it started out that way anyway. And one of the biggest selling points as well is that it can actually support up to 256 players per lobby. So those are some of the key things to know about the game that are being talked about quite a bit out there on Twitter and on Reddit as to what is so successful about this game. Now, in terms of the gameplay itself, it is actually really fun for the most part. The gunplay feels really solid. It feels honestly as good as pretty much any of the main shooters out there. It's not quite on the level of like Battlefield and Call of Duty, seeing as it's not obviously a AAA game, but regardless, the gunplay is still really good. It plays smoothly, and it feels fairly balanced as well in terms of the gunfights. It feels as though whenever you feel like you should win a gunfight, you kind of do, and whenever you can kind of tell that the enemy deserve to kill you, that is generally how it goes. So there's not really any issues that I have with the gunplay, which is obviously pretty much the key component to making a good shooter. Now, another key component is obviously to do with maps. The maps in this game do have destructive environments similar to like the old school Battlefield games. You can pretty much blow up most of the buildings in the game, and it does really add to that sort of Battlefield feeling that a lot of people have been talking about, where, you know, they're saying this is the Battlefield game that we wanted. The reason it feels very similar to Battlefield is because of that destruction mechanic. And so if you guys are big fans of, you know, Bad Company 2 and Battlefield 4 and games like that, you will definitely enjoy that aspect of this game. It even has some really cool mechanics that aren't available in games like Battlefield and Call of Duty. You can actually drag your downed teammates out of the crossfire to revive them. So if someone on your squad has died in the street, for example, you can run out there and actually drag them back behind a building and then revive them when you're safe, rather than having to do it out there in the open. So that is a really cool mechanic that has been sort of teased in Battlefield before. I think it was Battlefield 5 had a trailer prior to launch where you could actually see someone dragging someone out of the line of fire, and it's been something that I think Battlefield fans have wanted for quite some time, and unfortunately we just haven't got it. But obviously in this game you can actually do that. So that is another really cool mechanic, something that this game is actually doing that other games out there aren't doing. In terms of the amount of content, there are, I believe, 38 weapons in the game at launch, or obviously early access launch anyway, and there are 17 maps in the game already. Now, I haven't played on all the maps. I've only probably played about 3 or so hours so far, and I honestly couldn't even tell you which maps I've actually played on, simply because the only downside to the maps and the fact that they are low poly, as you guys can see by the gameplay, they all kind of look a little bit similar. That's really my only issue with them. But regardless, 17 maps is absolutely insane for a game in early access, and they're all pretty damn big maps as well. So in terms of the amount of content, it is definitely pretty solid on that front. Now, like I touched on, and obviously watching the gameplay, this is probably the first thing you guys will see. The game is low poly, so it doesn't look realistic, it doesn't look immersive by any means, and I think that has its pros and cons. Obviously the cons to it is that it doesn't really look that good. It kind of looks like a Minecraft or like a Roblox type of game, and if you're into your immersion or you really enjoy high quality graphics, then obviously this game is not going to be for you. There are pros to it though, if you can get past the way that the game looks. Those being that A, the game runs very smoothly, and as far as I can tell, this game would run on essentially any PC that you can have. Like anything that is from the last, I would say 6, 7, 8 years, those PCs should really be able to run this game. So you don't need a super high-end PC to be able to play it, which is a really positive addition. because a lot of people, for example, can't afford the high-end PCs to be able to play these AAA games just because they are so demanding on your PC. Another pro to the low poly sort of aspect of the game is that obviously it removes a lot of the textures that sometimes can like hide players. So we had the issues in Battlefield 5, for example, with the visibility of enemies. Even at the launch of 2042, there were a few issues with being able to see people, and this game does not have that issue. If you can see someone in your line of sight, you can definitely see them pretty much every time, purely because of the fact that there's not a bunch of like grass textures and little things like that that can kind of hide players. And so yeah, if you can see someone, you can see them. There's no issues there in terms of the visibility, which is definitely a very nice aspect. Another pro too is that because it is low poly, it means they can probably pump out a lot of content for this game a lot faster than AAA games, because obviously with the AAA game releasing new maps and stuff like that, there's so much detail that goes into making a brand new map. There are those like really high quality standards that we see now in not only shooters but just any game out there. All the maps and everything, they have to look so good. They have to look pretty much as real as they can. Whereas with this game, they don't have to put in that much detail. So I think they will be able to pump out a lot of content for this game at a pretty fast rate, which is obviously very exciting. The other thing is that as far as I know, there are no microtransactions in the game at all. So not even just like pay to win stuff. There's not even the ability to buy skins. Now, I am a little bit worried about that in terms of how are they possibly going to make money once the initial like launch hype has died down. You can't keep selling your game forever. There's only X amount of people who are going to play it, and once all those people have bought the game, and obviously at $15 that's not charging very much either, at that point there is no money coming into the business. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. I think it will kind of win over a lot of people saying there's no microtransactions at all. A lot of people will be really excited by that, but unfortunately I think that may hinder the game down the line. So that is really the only negative that I have so far about it. But hey, if they think they can run the game successfully without microtransactions, then I would absolutely love to see it. So that will be very interesting to watch. I'm not too confident that it will survive like long term, but we'll have to wait and see regardless. Now, with that being said, just 2 or 3 days after the launch, or the, I guess, early access launch, it did have 50,000 concurrent players on Steam, which is actually a really, really solid amount of players. That is up there with pretty much like any big game or any big shooter. Maybe not like the top ends, like, you know, when Call of Duty launches, there's more players, for example. But for a game like this to have 50,000 concurrent players, that is absolutely insane. And it is a really good sign. It shows a healthy player base, so it could end up surviving if either they can try to monetize it somehow, even just like a battle pass or something like that. But yeah, regardless whether it can survive long term, I think for the short term, it's definitely going to have a very healthy player base, which is very exciting to see, because obviously with games like this, there can be a lot of hype around it, and then when it actually launches, it can be pretty much dead on arrival, which I don't think any of us want to see. Overall, my thoughts on the game is that it is a lot of fun. For the price that it is, I think it is honestly worth buying. Even if you only play it for a month, for example, $15 is not that much to be paying for a game that you can get a month of gameplay out of. So personally, I do think it is worth the price tag. What I will say is that all the talk about it being like the Battlefield killer, and it's got elements of like Call of Duty and stuff in there too, people saying it's going to be the next big thing. I don't think that will be the case. Now, maybe I'm just being pessimistic, but I do think this is more of like a very niche type of game. I don't think this is going to be that Battlefield killer or the Call of Duty killer that I've seen put out there. It has a lot of elements of either of those games that we all love, but at the end of the day, it can only survive for so long. Unfortunately, like I said, without microtransactions, it's not going to be supported for like 5 years at least, not that I can see anyway. And so yeah, I see this as like a fun little alternative. It's almost like an alternate reality Battlefield that you can play for, I don't know, a few months, maybe a year before it kind of starts to die off. So on that side of things, I think it is a great purchase, but whether this is going to replace Battlefield for anyone, I don't think that will be the case. So just keep that in mind, but for now, it is definitely a fun game to be playing. And like I said, if you are wondering whether or not it is worth buying, I personally do think it is worth that $15 price tag. I'm keen to hear your thoughts down below though, so be sure to leave a comment whether you think it looks like any fun, whether you're going to buy it or not. I'm always keen to read your comments. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you all out there on the battlefield.